I never set out to raise anything. I just didn't like watching things starve. And that first cub was starving. I worked the galley on Corrigan's Reach, a border watch station bolted to a rock at the edge of nowhere, feeding 3 shifts of tired soldiers and the handful of civilian techs who kept the sensor arrays running. It wasn't glamorous work. Nobody saluted the cook. I liked it that way. Simple job, simple hours, and nobody expected anything heroic out of a man who spent his days elbow deep in ration trays. The cub came in through the loading hatch on a supply night, half-starved, fur-matted flat with engine grease, one ear torn. Vrale, the sensor techs called the species later. Big cat-coated predators, native to the ridge country outside the perimeter fence. Apex enough that the standing order was shoot on sight if one got inside the wire. This one didn't look like an apex anything. It looked like a bag of wet bones with claws. It backed itself into the corner between the ration lockers and hissed at me like it meant it. I believed it meant it. Full grown, that species could take a man's arm off at the shoulder without slowing its stride. I'd seen the perimeter briefings same as everyone else. The photographs of claw marks in bulkhead steel. The standing kill count from the ridge patrols. None of that seemed to matter much, looking at a shaking, half-starved animal backed into a corner of my own kitchen. I set a bowl of broth and shredded meat on the floor, slid it over with my boot, and went back to scrubbing trays. Didn't coo at it. Didn't reach for it. Didn't make a production out of being brave, because I wasn't being brave. I've never seen the sense in scaring something that's already scared, and a scared animal with teeth is a scared animal I'd rather not startle. It ate everything in the bowl before I finished the next rack of dishes, watching me the whole time over the rim like it expected the bowl to be a trick. When it was empty, it didn't run. It just sat there, ears still flat, tail wrapped tight around its own feet, and watched me finish my work like it had nowhere better to be. Quartermaster Dahl found out inside 2 days, because Dahl found out about everything on that station, usually before it happened. He came into the galley with his tablet already pulled up to the cull order. Standing station policy. Any Vreli inside the perimeter got tranquilized and relocated, or worse if it wouldn't go quiet. "You're feeding a wild predator in my mess hall," he said. "I'm feeding a hungry animal in my mess hall," I said. Didn't check its paperwork. He didn't think that was funny. Dahl rarely thought anything was funny. He told me the cull team would collect it by morning, and I told him that was his call to make, and I went back to my dishes. I didn't argue. I found that arguing with a man like Dahl just gives him something to win. The cub was gone by morning all right. Gone from the corner, curled up asleep on a folded tarp behind the ovens, 3 feet closer to the stove where it was warm. The cull team never got near it. By the time they came looking, it had 3 siblings with it. That was the part nobody quite believed later, even the ones who watched it happen. 4 cubs, all Vregrail, all born wild on the ridge, and never touched by a human hand before that week, and within a month, every one of them was lining up at the galley hatch at the same hour every evening, sitting in a row like they'd been drilled for it, waiting their turn at the bowl. I named them for what they reminded me of, because nobody else was going to, and somebody had to call them something. Ash, for the gray one with the torn ear. Rook, because he stole things off the counter with the patience of a career thief. Tallow, soft and round as a candle. Wick, the last one out of the litter, and the first one into trouble. Always first to the hatch, and last to figure out he wasn't in charge of the line. They slept in a heap behind the ovens where the deck plating ran warm, and some mornings, I'd find all 4 of them stacked on top of each other, like someone had poured them there. Tallow's chin resting on Rook's ribs. Wick sprawled sideways across the both of them. A soldier walking past for early rations would stop dead in the hatch, tray forgotten in his hands, staring at 4 apex predators sleeping in a pile behind a mess hall stove like house cats, and I'd tell him to keep the line moving before his eggs went cold. They watched everything I did and copied it without being asked. I held a ladle a certain way, and Rook would sit with a scrap of packing foam gripped the same way in his forepaws, dead serious about it. I waited my turn in the ration line out of habit, and the cubs started waiting theirs. No shoving, no snapping over the bowl, just 4 sets of eyes tracking the ladle until it was their turn. Soldiers who'd been briefed their whole careers that Viral were unpredictable killers stood in the hatch doorway with their trays forgotten, watching an apex litter behave better than a mess line of trained cadets. Dahl hated it. Hated it the way a man hates something he can't write a form for. He told the garrison commander it was a discipline problem, a safety hazard, a station full of soldiers indulging a cook's private zoo. He called it, meaning it as an insult, standing in the mess hall with his arms crossed while tallow napped across my boots. The warm bowl doctrine, apparently, since that's the whole of our defense policy now. The name stuck, not the way he meant it to. Within a season, the crew was saying it straight-faced, no mockery in it at all. Somebody scrawled the warm bowl doctrine on a strip of tape and stuck it above the hatch where the cubs lined up, and nobody ever took it down, including, eventually, Doll. I want to say I taught them something. I don't think I did. I think I just didn't flinch, and something about a grown man who didn't flinch was more interesting to 4 half-wild predators than anything the Cull team's tranquilizer rifles ever offered them. I fed them because they were hungry. I didn't ask for loyalty. I got it anyway, the way you get frost on a window. Slow, and then all at once, and you can't point to the exact moment it happened. They grew the way wild things grow, when nobody's stunting them for a cage. 3 years in, Ash stood taller at the shoulder than the station's War Beast Alpha, a thresh-bound unit the garrison kept for perimeter drills, and the other 3 weren't far behind him. They still came to the hatch every evening. They still waited their turn. A 400-pound apex predator waiting patiently behind his sister for a bowl of broth is not a thing you get used to, no matter how many years you watch it. It was an inspection tour that finally cornered Doll into losing the argument in front of an audience. Sector Command sent 2 officers through to review the station's wildlife containment compliance. Tablets out, Doll walking point, and doing his best to explain, without quite admitting it, why 4 adult Vrel had the run of his galley instead of a containment pen. He'd apparently decided this was his chance to fix an old mistake. He gave the order to have them crated before the inspectors got a look. The handlers got as far as the mess hall door. I was at the ladle station when they came through, 3 men in containment gear with a repulsor crate between them, and Doll trailing a half-step back like he wanted credit for the order, without standing close enough to answer for it. The mess hall went quiet in the particular way a room goes quiet when everyone in it already knows how this is going to end, except the men holding the crate. Ash didn't growl. None of them did. They just stood, all 4, shoulder to shoulder, filling the hatch the cubs used to line up in, and looked at the crating team with the flat, patient stillness of something that has never once needed to raise its voice to make a point. The handlers looked at Doll. Doll looked at 4 apex predators who outweighed him, combined by half a ton, and had never harmed a soul on that station, and he did not repeat the order. "Quartermaster," one of the inspectors said, checking her tablet against the crew log, "your compliance notes list this as the warm bowl doctrine. Is that the station's actual protocol?" Doll stood there a long moment with the whole galley watching, Ash's eyes steady on him the entire time, and then he said, quietly, that yes, it was. They wrote it into the record that afternoon. Official as anything else on that station. Feed what's hungry, don't flinch at what's frightened, and let trust arrive on its own schedule. I still work the galley. I still fill the bowl first before I fill my own tray. Out of habit more than ceremony. And some evening, close to the same hour every time, 4 Vrel the size of transport crates still come padding through that hatch and sit, patient as anything, waiting for a scrap of bread from a man who never once thought he was doing anything worth writing down.